All right, it's your host, Dan Clapp, CEO of Voda Cleaning and Restoration. And I'm excited to welcome a special guest and friend of Voda's, Stephen Llevano. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for having me today, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to chat with you and catch up. We were just chatting about restoration and how both of us are not necessarily, restoration people to start. We are business people that got into restoration. But I was hoping first, before we jump into our conversation, would you mind kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and your background and company with our audience here?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Stephen Llevano. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Capabuild. We're a job management platform specifically built for the restoration industry. You know, kind of going back to kind of more of my origin story. So I started, I've been in and around technology, the Bay Area my entire life, but also had kind of a tie. My family ran a small metal fabrication, sheet metal factory business in the Bay Area, and it was kind of decimated over time by the advancements of technology and hyperflight sales motions, and they just couldn't keep up with the times. So ultimately, they shut the business down. And but it when I was kind of looking for an entrepreneurial endeavor, I'd been in around commercial real estate, property, construction, et cetera, for the better part of a decade, and I was looking for a software platform that I could build about 3 years ago that was really going to add value to kind of the built world and to the services addressing that built world. And I kept coming back to restoration. I'd seen a number of restoration projects when I was in kind of the property space, but the funny thing is, I'll fully admit I was the jerk, on the client side of like, just mop it up. Like what? It's just water in the carpet. Just like vacuum, get it going. Like we got to get this project back on track. And the further I dug, the more I realized just how compliance driven, how detailed. And I mean, this business is truly an art form. And the systems and technology that they were using was archaic. And so what you saw is just a lot of businesses that were impeded in their own growth because they're too busy trying to figure out how to run their systems. So yeah, I kind of came to the industry 2 years ago. My co-founder and I met, and we started building this thing, and we've been building truly for 2 years. We'll launch a little more publicly in January, but yeah, it's been a long build.
Yeah, what I like about what you guys are doing, Stephen, is I know you put all your energy, money, resources, and time into building the product, and that's been your focus for 2 years. But before we jump into that, like, just we got to share the story because the amount of connections between you, Zach, our COO, my neighbor and friend, like I just think it's crazy how connected our companies are.
Yeah, I mean, like Dan, you're a relationship guy, so am I. So I think I think Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to butcher and the paraphrase of this, but basically, he says, "I am where I am today, not because I'm lucky, not because I'm a self-made man, but because of the people around me." And so I kind of it's like if I can find someone interesting, someone I can help, like I'm always trying to do that. And it just like you said, it like life kind of leads you in weird ways. Yeah, like you and I found out that a good mutual friend you're literally a neighbor of. So it's just a small world, but yeah, I
But
just
it's a crazier connection, right? You didn't like a friend. How did you and Zach get connected?
yeah. So I think it was Zach's childhood friend was saying, hey, a buddy of mine's thinking about starting a restoration company, and so I was like, all right, yeah, like I'll talk to him, see how it goes, and then the further we started speaking, I think Zach can attest to it. We probably were. It's a bit of a budding bromance, but we were talking on the phone for I don't know, a couple hours a week, just around like our visions for our respective businesses, and then kind of how we could be helpful to each other. So I just found that like you bring good people into your world, you're going to figure out ways to make life a little more fun. And you're going to be more successful that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I guess, what are you seeing again, so me being someone that didn't start in restoration, I've been in business and in franchising and then got into restoration, but what are you seeing the major pain points with restoration companies when it comes to technology? The one thing I'll mention kind of to as a precursor, me getting into restoration, learning the product offerings and what you need to have is so much less clear than many other verticals within home services. Restoration, no one's really dialed in on the technology. There's a lot of different technologies kind of fragmented. What are you seeing, the most tech savvy restoration companies are starting to realize?
Yeah, I think I've been a big proponent of this. It's at time it can be counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish, but I think for the longest time, the restoration industry has been driven by insurance referrals and or plumbing referrals, or just where someone is handing you revenue, and then your job is to go out and execute on that. But the problem with that is oftentimes the people handing you the business want you to report information, collect information, and utilize different systems. But as you know, not every business has one customer. So when you have multiple customers, and oftentimes, and that customer being at the endpoint, an insurance company, they're asking to use all these different software systems. So what you see these restoration contractors, I mean, you touched on it, like how difficult it is to see what systems to use. It's because everyone else is saying, hey, use a little bit of this, use a little bit of that. It's like going to a bunch of mothers and saying, what's the best recipe for apple pie? The further you go back in generations, it's going to vary, by every little bit. You need 1,000 ingredients. So anyway, I just think that the biggest problem I've seen is that the software stack these businesses are implementing is largely predicated on what their customers are telling them they have to do, but it's not the best thing that services their business. Customers are looking for good solutions. They're not looking for someone just to use the software system they say to use. So I think the best firms out there are the ones that are going, how do we want to do business? How do we run our business? And then what software systems fit that workflow? Not the other way around. A lot of these workflows that these businesses are operating with are built on by software systems that are trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah, it's interesting because in my experience in restoration, um, you know, again, getting the different technology products to mesh and communicate with one another is incredibly difficult. Um, and I just what I've found so far. So, for example, what we believe one of the key elements of succeeding in business is the simple tenet of communicating and over communicating and stuff our dads taught us to do in business. It really does matter, right? Answering the phone and being communicative. And what we're looking at, continually to enhance is communicating with our, communicating with our end user, our customers that are, we're servicing, and then also communicating better with our referral partners who provide us opportunities and make sure that we're hitting our SLAs properly and communicating that back if something goes wrong or well. Just simple technology to communicate with customers and to communicate with the people who provide us business opportunities. Um, and I don't find that there's a ton of technology there yet for this type of communication.
Yeah, I mean, part of that too, like, is good communication is good information, right? So, talking for the sake of talking, you're not giving, everyone you're talking to is busy. And so if you're just giving them errant updates, but it's like, all right, well, what do I need to know? Like,
Yeah.
I think both you and I have found as, I don't want to speak for you, but relative newbies to the industry, is the fact that, like, this is a really highly complex workflow. And the average customer doesn't need to know the ins and outs and what dehumidifier, what desiccant were you using, and why your
Yeah.
GPP is this or that. Like, you just, all those things, they want to know, is my property going to be fixed in a timely manner? And are you going to make me feel like it's a trustworthy process? So I think that communication, like, I think a lot of the problems with these softwares that were built prior, and I don't want to speak ill of anyone because I think there are immensely robust systems, but that's just it. It's that you need a motorcycle, you buy a motorcycle. You don't buy a motorcycle, a helicopter, a boat, a car,
Yeah.
an all-terrain vehicle that all does one, because you're gonna, a jack of all trades is a master of none. So in the absence of, good communication, all these great systems that do a lot of things just kind of fall on themselves. So yeah, I'm curious, how do you think about that when you're building a business from the ground up, like, building communication? Like, what are you thinking about building good systems? Is it protocols? Is it software? Is it a combination of both?
Well, I think you were spot on when you said, good communication starts with it, good information. Where we've really been laser focused is on a product that we have. that we built internally called Scoreboard, which is a data analytics platform that tracks all the KPIs for our franchise owners. For Voda, because Voda is a franchise system in restoration, and we've been laser focused on that, and it's not an easy project. I mean, we started that project in early this year, so we're almost coming up on a year of developing it, and it's not an easy project. But what we know is that it's providing our franchise owners with every single data point that they need. And my vision that we're going to take that Scoreboard product and then apply that to ranking and rating the ability to hit the SLAs that we have in place. So one of the things we're doing at Voda is being very flexible with our regional and future national accounts that we're looking toward establishing, and saying, look, what is your current provider not doing? We're nimble right now, so we can customize this to work for you. And then we're going to track our franchise, or at least the vision or hope is we're going to track our franchise owners and be able to say, hey, look, like you scored an 8, which is great, or you scored a 6, and this is the third time you scored a 6. We need to improve this, or we need to rotate you out of kind of that referral program, right? Because
Yeah.
the only way you can manage anything is by measuring it.
No, that's, yeah. And you bring it, I think there's kind of an interesting element to that as well. Like where not only you're managing your franchises, but if all of your franchises are scoring 3s and 4s, maybe that's not the right customer. I mean, I think you and I both know, kind of coming from our respective backgrounds, like sometimes you gotta, I don't know, fire customers maybe a little too harsh, but the power of a good service is knowing who a good customer is as well. And so like that's an interesting element to be able to track that data. And then from that, you'll be able to see who are the customers we should continually invest in, because some customers are just tough to work with. And if they're not making much money on them, is that something you at an early stage want to grow with?
Yeah, no, 100%. And for us, like what's so important is like we're working with a lot of property managers and plumbers, and we want to continue to earn their business, and so we want our franchise owners to be able to see that not only off of a gut feeling that the business did a good job, but like how is it being ranked? I'm a big fan of surveys and providing surveys, and so we're going to continue to try to collect as much data as we can, feed that into Scoreboard, and then give that information to our franchise owners. I personally, again, in restoration, one of the things that attracted me was the fact that there was a lack of uniform technology, and we could implement technology better than I think that a lot of franchise systems. And so, Zach's been at the forefront of working with you and with others to provide really great technology. So much so that I think we overwhelm our potential franchise owners sometimes, because like we just did so much ahead of other brands. I mean, there's restoration companies with 200 units. They don't have the tech, or more. They don't have the technology that that we have. But I think that that's when you're in home services, there's only so many ways you can change how you're going to extract water out of someone's house. So you win by being more
Yeah.
efficient and being more, like I said, more communicative.
Yeah. And really, like when you start to look at like how you're building these systems from the ground up, there's a beauty and simplicity as well. Like even internally with our own company, like I mean, it is the software company plight that you look at, like even an early stage company like ourselves, you're paying for 50, 60 different types of documentation software, Google Docs, Notion, Slack, etc., all these different things. And you're like, what are we actually using these various things for? And so centralizing that information and having a purpose built approach like you all have done, I think is really powerful, especially as you're trying to build a standard of service for your customers, so that when you work with Voda that you're going to get a particular level of service and a particular level of output. And then to circle it all back, you're going to be able to track the progress and the success of that across your internal projects as well.
Absolutely. So I guess switching gears, Stephen, like, question
Yeah.
for you, like, you're super hyper connected in the restoration space, very well known in the IRA. And when I went to that conference, I felt like a lot of people knew you. If someone's listening to this and they're running a restoration company, like, what would you say are like some tips on how to get connected to the community? Because I know for me, like when I went to RIA, even though it's my first year, and even though I consider myself decent at networking, it was a little bit overwhelming. So any tips on how did you get so connected into the industry so quickly?
Yeah. I mean, I'll kind of like go back at talking about my family's business. When I started, when I first wanted to start exploring the space, I was like, hey, this is a pretty interesting industry. I was driven by a few things. At the end of the day, every operator truly cares. They really care about helping a homeowner, a customer at a time of like dire need. Like no one planned for a restoration project. No one planned to come home and find out that their pipe burst when they were coming home from a vacation or from their kids' soccer practice. So as part of that, and as a new entrant to the industry, you have to show you care too. So I think one of the first things I did, I called, I think upwards of like 250, 300 contractors, and literally anyone that would let me come on site. I was like, hey, I don't want to, get on a Zoom, ask you to do a survey. I was like, hey, I'll fly out to Dallas, to Florida, to Southern California, to Central California, Denver, Virginia. I was flying all over the country just for a 2 hour meeting and to go on site, meet with the technicians because this is a very boots on the ground business. So for me, I don't know how much it scales. I'm married now. I'm expecting my first child next year, early next year, but I was just on flights. I was literally in front of people showing them that I was willing to put my boots on, get in, learn how to do it, do the work of a technician. I would help out some of our early customers. So yeah, just I think you've got to show you care as much as they care because there's a lot of private equity businesses, a lot of smart software players trying to come in and say, hey, I care about you. Well, it shows a lot when you show up, that you care. So that'd be my advice, kind of networking. And you got to pick the right people. You got to pick people that you connect with.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate what you're saying on that topic of, flying around. I fly around. Well, I'm starting to cut back now,
I
but
know you
I
do.
was flying
Yeah.
around. Yeah. But it's funny, like as a younger, business owner, I'm sure plenty of the people listening to their similar age, mid 30s, let's say, and, early 40s and or early 30s. I started my first business in college and I've, been successful so far by outworking everyone. And I hope to continue to be that way. But what I've come to realize recently is I can't continue to think that my winning strategy is to work late into the night and weekends and fly all around because I plan to have a family in the near future. I'd like to.
Yeah.
And I started to say to myself, well, how are you going to start winning now without working all night so that you can have a family one day, right? And so figuring out where to spend your time is super important. If someone's in that case they're running their business, they have a family. Have you found there's any way to connect with RIA and the community of restoration virtually? Are there a lot of events that you attend virtually at all?
I think it's happening more and more, especially, during cat season when people are, maybe tied to a physical location more and they can't do. That's why, in this industry, you see conference season is like in typically speaking, the
Yeah.
best weather times of the year.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I certainly think there's like a virtual experience, but for the most part, it's still a very look me in the eyes, shake your hand, like, type of industry. But yeah, I mean, if you figure that out, Dan, please share some notes because I'm going to be quite busy come early next year and, I'll have to start to adjust. I'm very much like you. I don't know. I think you and I have been texting at all hours of the night and morning, trying to figure that stuff out. So I've yet to crack that code, but
Yeah.
I'll certainly share my secrets when I figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is you start a business, you're going to have to work more hours than anybody, but eventually you should be able to, peel out of that. Like my last business I had for 7 years. So I was starting to, for five and year 6 and 7, I was out of the day to day. I was living a pretty nice lifestyle. And then I jumped back into this and, it's 24/7, but that fades. Um, yeah. And, honestly, I feel like going to, like going to that conference, like I would cut out everything else that's not
Yeah.
relevant, and I'd go spend the 2 days to learn about my industry. I mean, it's happens a couple of times a year. It's not, that often.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a great, like the one thing I find and maybe it was just my lack of conferences from my prior industries, but I've really found that they being the restoration industry, have really found a way to bring people together. Like the best time to get some of the best people and the best thinkers in the industry together is, during conference season. So trying to do your best to, like you said, block everything out, go meet with folks, see how they're thinking. What are they worried about? How can you and I as business owners trying to make a difference in this industry? really address those pain points for our own customers.
Absolutely. And while we're chatting here, I want to give our listeners, if you don't know about these events, the RIA, Restoration Industry Association, is a great event to go to, which is, let's see, we're looking here. It's taking place, I believe it's in April, if I'm not mistaken. And then you've got the Restoration Remediation Conference that takes place, I think, also in April. If I'm not mistaken, they're both in April.
Yeah, a lot of
Let's
Januaries and
see.
Aprils and Februaries, but I'll give a plug for Michelle Blevins at Cleaning and Restoration Magazine. They have a really good kind of events calendar. So it puts together and aggregates all of the cleaning and restoration events for the industry every year. And so that's my Bible. I usually share it with
Mm,
my wife, and hey, this is what my travel schedule looks like for the year.
yeah.
The nice thing is Michelle's done the legwork or Michelle and her team have done the legwork for me. So it's a nice, I'll give her credit where credit's due. That's been a really valuable tool, especially as I'm trying to figure out where the heck am I going to go?
Yeah, no, it's interesting as a franchisor, like, our corporate headquarters, I'm in New York City, but our corporate headquarters is in Madison, Wisconsin. We have what's called a Discovery Day once a month, which our prospective franchise owners come to. And then we have training every 6 weeks, which currently has been in different locations, but that's in Wisconsin. And then some other meetings for the team. So I think I'll be getting myself a property in Wisconsin in the near future because I don't want to keep traveling back and forth. Um, but traveling and running a business on a national level is tough. But that's what I love about restoration. The fact that you can operate a business locally, but then you can also go and do cats and and be involved in more um, weather related events, bring in a bunch of money. And I've never really seen an industry like that. Like if I were to run a home services business in any other vertical, I'd pretty much be the guy in my town doing the work. But the fact that you can go to other areas and expand your business market share is my favorite part about one of my favorite parts about restoration for sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating to like, um, when Hurricane Ian hit last year, I was actually I was in Miami for work, and we ended up leaving just short of it. But I wanted to go back and be kind of boots on the ground with some of the contractors we knew in the area. I was naive enough to think that I could just get a hotel or find an Airbnb in effectively what was a disaster zone. And we realized it's just like the immense logistics it takes to get to these events. And I keep going back to like how much these people care. They really, really care about delivering for their clients. And yeah, just getting to that point is kind of interesting to see. Like you could have a contractor from Northern Oregon drive all the way down to Florida to respond to a hurricane event.
And there's
Dan, did we
trucks
lose
of
you?
people and caravans. It's amazing. Well,
Yeah,
Stephen,
exactly.
thanks for joining. If someone wants to get in touch with
Absolutely.
you and learn from you, connect with you, where would they go to connect with you?
Yeah, so we're kind of operating under the radar up until January. We'll have a much more public launch, but they can go to our website. It's www.capabuild.app. It's CAPA build, and they can sign up for our newsletter. We'll get your email and then send you a release when we're kind of going wide to the market and showing what we've been working on hard for the last 2 years.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's been great.